Welcome back to the Neurospiritual Awakening podcast with Dr. Val. I am your host, and today on the show, we have an incredible, courageous, one of the most inspiring women I know. Welcome to the podcast, Max Lowen.
Wow. Thank you for that intro, Val. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. It is the truth for me, and it is my absolute honor that you're here. And before I let you introduce yourself, however you want to do that, I let my people introduce themselves really, because you know a lot more about yourself than I do. But before you do, I just want to thank you for being here and thank you for everything that you do for the world, what you've done for me, and for the people. Just
Oh,
really, really massive thank you.
yeah. Well, I'm honored that, you're having me and think so highly of me. Um, I'm just me. I did survive some fairly out of this world atrocities, grew up for 18 years under satanic ritual abuse. I was trafficked as a child. I was taken often to underground facility in Rome where I was tortured in various ways. So things like electric shock, being buried alive with dead bodies, waterboarding, rape, beatings, being forced to watch the torture and murder of animals and people, being kept isolated in cages, extremes like in freezers or in very hot environments, in technology, MK Ultra type stuff. So pretty much everything you can imagine, I was put through. And I was that facility connected through underground tunnels to the very subterranean levels of the Vatican. And so I was taken there often, and I have witnessed them uh, brutalizing and then sacrificing babies and children. They have a special altar down there. They have a room. It would be in attendance by like popes and bishops and VIPs of every industry. And it's a big deal. And when the child is sacrificed, they're cut open while they're alive. And so the blood is collected in these chalices, they drink it. Sometimes they'll pluck out the heart and eat it, but that's Satanism. They're cannibalistic and they drink blood. And so what I can tell you from many experiences with the Vatican, other than that as well, is they are satanic. They worship Lucifer for a fact. I was trafficked from there to sometimes given to people, the different elites. Sometimes it would be parties. Sometimes, if you've ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut, some
I
of those
have.
parties look like that. The only thing missing in that movie is the children brought into the party so the people can pick whatever age or gender or race they want. Sometimes they were hunting parties on grounds, so outdoors, and we would have to run and hide in the woods, and then they would hunt us.
Again, like that other
They
movie, I forgot. Hunger Games. Hunger Games, right? Or like a
kind
flavor.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't quite show that level of it, but yeah, so things of that nature. If anyone wants to see the testimony of other SRA survivors, go to 50voices.org. They have done little 15-minute interviews with a bunch of us, and you'll hear very similar stories. So it's something I decided to expose a few years ago, starting with my own story. Then it evolved to me doing interviews like you're doing, and interviewing people who expose really all aspects of the global satanic cult that runs this planet. I aim to give people the information that they need. We're all deeply mind controlled in this world. I've done seminars on mind control, on the real Vatican behind the scenes, on satanic ritual abuse. If people want to purchase those, the recordings are on my website. I'm also trained as a trauma therapist, so I've done my own trauma work. I help other people do that work. And so for me, basically, the reason I call my website Unbroken, if you're born in this reality, you're going to go through some degree of trauma. It's just a continuum. I mean, maybe I'm on this extreme, but we all go through it. And I do think that we can unbreak ourselves. I think the winning formula is to do our inner work, our trauma work, and to learn the truth about how the world really operates. Because, like I said, we've been heavily mind controlled in every way. And I think once we do that, and I see it happening, I see consciousness rising, and I think we are here on this planet now, you and I, and everyone who's awake, deliberately because we're in a moment of massive transition. They have tried to do yet another reset. They've reset humanity many times, and this time it's failing. And we are going to go forward from this hell on earth reality to a whole different way of being. And that's my purpose. That's what I want to do, is everything I can to, number one, expose the atrocities they are still doing to children, like what they did to me, and two, to really encourage people to do their own work and get an understanding of how the world works, because it's up to us and we absolutely have the power to free ourselves from this situation and move into something much better.
Mm. Wow. What an intro at that. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, okay, thanks. The interview is now over. All my questions have been asked. I mean, seriously, I'm just like, I'm speechless, obviously. I can't even find the words to say to respond to you introducing yourself. And, some of the listeners may be there too, because although this podcast is about the awakening process for human beings, I find that every guest that I have on the show has a different flavor, I would say, or call
Yeah.
it, or a different version of the awakening process. And sometimes we go through multiple processes, awakening processes throughout our lives. And for
Yes.
me, yeah, for me, when I heard your interview with Georgina Grace, I think it was over a year ago, and you mentioned some of the things that you just mentioned, I was like, I was so naive. I was like, really? I can't believe this is happening. And the only reason I could relate to what you were saying is because I'm a neuroscientist and neuropsychologist. So I know this sounds really like primitive, but I was there just a year ago myself. So, you know, and I've learned, I've learned, like I'll give myself that. I've learned and I'm open to learning and just I guess getting with it, with the reality of what's going on rather than pretending like it's not, or just like, well, yeah, pretending that it's not. So hopefully if you're listening to this, you're find yourself in that place, or if you haven't, that's fine too, but get yourself there because it's real. Yeah.
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 That is what I wanted to say. And also the courage that it takes to speak about things like that when the world sort of isn't really working that way. Um, can you say a little bit more about that? Like when did you decide, like, you know what? I've had enough of this fuckery. I swear a lot. My podcast listeners know that.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm right at home then.
Good, good. So yeah, when you've had enough of that fuckery and like you're doing the things that you're doing now, like what happened for you?
You know, I have to say, if I go back to the very, very beginning when I was a small child, I had some kind of defiant part in me, which is why I'm alive. So I did overhear them when I was very small talking about, they use us for our light because the people that run the world, they're psychopaths, they're pedophiles, they're Satanists, and they're parasites. They're severed from the life force, from the true creator, God source. So they cannot create anything. So they have to use us and our energy and life force and light to create this hell on earth, which is the good news, the bad news, but it's really the good news because we don't have to create this that we have now. We can create something else. So when I was very small, I overheard them saying, we're going to use her light and her being and power to we're going to convert her to the dark side and use her. And that right away, something they should never have said that, because something in me was like, oh, hell no, never. So it's something that I held on to so they could do all that I had no power. I was a child. They could do whatever they wanted, but they couldn't quite snuff that out. And, then I grew up, I went out, I got away when I was 18. I came to the United States. I went to university and graduate schools and everything, and I worked. And I was always in a process of healing. Um, and then I had a daughter, and I had that experience of being a mother. So I learned that was more healing, more love. And I went through my own work. So I did a decade of deep, deep healing work. It was very painful. Honestly, it was brutal. Just a shade less brutal than what I had already experienced and gone through. So that was pretty rough. And for a few years after that, I was kind of recovering from all that work. But it really, doing that deep inner work really freed me. It put all the pieces of the puzzle together. I was suddenly, recovered myself. And some years after that, I got to the point where I remember actually saying, what the fuck, God? Children are still being raped and trafficked and satanically abused. Like I was like, this can't exist on earth. And then I heard this, okay, well then do something about it. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, talk about it. So I thought, oh shit, I have to tell my story, don't I? I'm naturally kind of more shy, introverted. So just if you had told me 10 years ago I would be on camera doing what I've been doing the last few years, I would have laughed in your face. Like, no. But I did an interview, I told my story, and then it just kind of evolved from there. I began to interview other people. And I have to say, as a side effect, there are some incredible human beings on this planet. Those of us who are awake are not alone. There's more and more, and people are doing really amazing work in many, many different ways, right? So it took me a while to get to the point where I felt reluctantly, but I started to tell my story. And at first, every time I would talk, or every time even I would interview other people, they do a lot of programming with satanic ritual abuse. So I had a lot of programs that would open up and backlash internally. Like I would, even in the interviews, I would sweat. I'd have to like peel my clothes off after the interview. My legs were shaking. I mean, you couldn't see it on camera. I would come across pretty composed, but I was terrified. Parts of me were terrified because I had been told, if you ever speak out, we're going to hunt you down and kill you, and we're going to kill everyone you love. So, those things are in there, and sometimes they activate and come up when you start to do the things that are forbidden. So it was a process. I can tell you that a few years later, like today, it's not that way. I've overcome that.
Okay, we are back. Obviously, they didn't like what was being said, so we got bumped off. But here we are again, back at it, speaking the truth. So, Max, would you please so kindly just say maybe the last few sentences of what you were saying before?
Yeah, I was kind of describing the internal process of speaking out and how hard it was at first, because it activated programming in me that was put in me like you better not say anything or reveal what happened or else. So it was really hard at first every time I was interviewed, and even every time I interviewed other people. I would be sweating during the interview. Luckily, no one could see my armpits. I would be shaking sometimes. I would wake up those nights after interviews, like with panic and going, oh shit, what did I say? Like I said too much. And so it's a process. And fast forward a few years later to today, it's okay. Like I can be here with you and be fine.
Yeah.
Um, But you asked kind of like what that process was like. And so internally it was a little challenging at first, but um, I don't like to be kept down, and those bastards will not shut me up. So I just pushed through until it became easy.
Hmm. Again, so, so inspiring. And I hope it inspires the people that are listening that, may find themselves wherever on the spectrum of speaking out and speaking their truth, whatever their experience may be. There's your experience, which is just, horrific and very specific. And then there's other experiences. So I hope the listeners can find themselves in your sharing and, get the courage to speak. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's so much power. I used to think due to my own programming that, oh, my voice doesn't matter. I'm just one person. What can I do? It's nothing interesting about me. And then here we are, I'm running this podcast, and it's like, fuck knows who's listening. But you know what? My intention is that it ripples through and has an effect on people's lives and on the trajectory of this planet. That's my intention anyway. And I think it's worth speaking for.
Yeah. And I want to say something to what you said about being a mom. That is something that's devalued in our world because the creatures at the top of the pyramid are very patriarchal. But think about it this way, Val. We take a soul from a different realm and we bring it into our bodies and make a body for it and bring it into this reality. There's nothing more badass than that in the whole wide world. Okay. So to be a mother in a normal society would be the top tier, like greatest thing that people can do on this planet.
Mm,
So don't ever feel they do minimize us, but no.
yeah. And thank you for saying that. It's definitely been my experience more and more so. And I think more people are speaking about it like that, or at least the people I follow on my socials are like real, real like moms with guts, and we're bringing forth this new era of what a mother is. And it's just what you just said. I mean, look, I have a PhD in neuroscience, I've done some shit in my life, but being a mother is like a whole other game, like really, really, like it. I don't Yeah, I've just
Yeah.
become this
No, a
whole. Yeah.
PhD cannot prepare you for motherhood. It's peanuts compared to motherhood. Not even if you just talk about the physical. I mean, when your belly is as big as a freaking house and you can barely walk, and then like in childbirth and then the sleepless years after. I mean, yeah, it's the one time in our lives when we're parents where I think it's the biggest spiritual evolution a human can go through, because you have to selflessly be there for this little beautiful innocent being that has come into the world through us, and you have to give up literally your sleep, your body, your showers, sometimes your life for several years to, if you're doing it right. It's really much harder than of course, than they show in the movies, but it's also, as you know, the biggest love that you will ever feel is the love that you feel for your children. And it's a sacred thing to bring little beings into this world because they're our future.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just present to that now. It's pretty amazing. It is a privilege for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. Going back to you being, how do you get born into what you got born into? Like, how do you get born into SRA and all that stuff? It starts happening. Like, I mean, you can talk about it from whatever, like, you can say my soul chose this or whatever, like, however
Mm,
you want to say it, it's
yeah.
totally up to you. But how does that happen?
Well, there's many layers of that answer. So the first one, since you referenced it, is I do recall I have memories of pre-incarnation, um, of being at some kind of meeting, galactic meeting, where there were other human-looking beings, but different varieties, and discussing planet Earth and what was going on here. And from what I remember, this planet was super significant to what was happening all over the universe. And so the discussion was around how it had been captured by the dark. And so I volunteered, and many people volunteered. I'm not special or different, but from my perspective, I volunteered and I decided to incarnate into one of the darker places on earth and be involved with, which is the Vatican. And so when you're outside of a planet that is of a low frequency and dealing with this kind of darkness, you cannot interfere. It's against universal law, but you can incarnate, go into the shit, survive it, heal from it, and then speak about it and expose it from that perspective, right? So that's what I chose to do.
Mm.
How do we get there are, okay, there's different tiers. So there's the bloodline families. So big names like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Vanderbilts and the Black nobility families and whatnot. So these, even children born in these families, they will put them through ritual abuse because they're grooming these children for specific roles in the global hierarchy when they grow up. And so the satanic ritual abuse is to create so much trauma that it splits the child, and then the child can be programmed with certain altars that or certain ways to ensure that they do their job for the cult later on. So as an example, some of the programming can be like people who are assassinate, like the lone wolves who supposedly assassinated like JFK or other presidents or big figures in history. They were MK Ultra. They were put through this kind of abuse to create an altar that when a certain time or date or trigger word or sentence, they go out and they execute the task. So similarly, any leaders you see, like the president of the United States or the president of Canada or the prime minister of here, they will be, or the global agency people, they will be groomed from small childhood for this role. So they will come from these families that are generationally satanic, and they will be put through this.
Mm.
Then there's like other tiers, more lower tiers, where there's just certain families that have been through this and they pass it on to their children. There's a factor that they can also identify certain beings who incarnate, who have a lot of light, and then they target those children specifically. It can be accidental, like the cult is always looking for talent. So for example, I don't know, like for example, Justin Bieber, this little boy who has a great singing voice and he auditions and he's got star potential. He didn't grow up in that, but they'll say, oh, we can use this kid. And then they'll suck him in. And then he, as people can probably see, has been put through a ton of abuse once he entered that sort of Hollywood sphere, which is full
Mm.
of this stuff. So
Mm.
it can be many different ways that you get into it. And lastly, I'll say, like, for example, my friend Kathy O'Brien, who's a survivor of MK Ultra, she got into it because her father was a pedophile and was molesting her and making child porn. And back in the day, he was mailing it out and he got caught. And so this is very classic, very typical. They said to him, well, if you give us your daughter for MK Ultra, then we won't prosecute you for this. And we'll, in fact, we'll give you a lot of money. And so anyone who's naturally a pedophile or naturally doing something negative or dark will be sucked in and recruited as well. So it's a whole variety of ways.
Mm. Th- Thank you. That definitely answers that question. And how can you, okay, well, I mean, this is like the next primitive thing to us. How do you get out? Okay, you're now in. How the fuck do you get out?
Well, some people don't get out. It kind of depends. There are sadly a lot of people, a lot of young women who are used as breeders. So they will be impregnated and birth children that will be used to traffic or to sacrifice. And they're usually kept locked up and then they die from the raping and the breeding. There's children that don't make it because they're considered expendable. And then there's others that, like myself, a little less, not quite as expendable. So, part of the family. In my case, my father was not part of this and he was American. So I was always destined to come to America for university. And I also myself, when I was 18, I just got to a point where I don't know, something came in me, some power of who I am. And I just said, that's it, bitches, I'm done. You will not touch me anymore. I'm not going to be willing to do this. And see, they train us in many abilities. Okay. They train us in psychic abilities and, if you ever saw the children's show, The Last Airbender, it's really cute to watch, but it's true. Like they can train us with the elements. And so we become weaponized because that's what the cult wants to put out into the world, weaponize people to do this, that, or the other. And so when you turn on that and you say, I'm not doing it anymore, it's a bit of a problem because now you're weaponized and yeah, you're not consenting to be used by them anymore. And you could be sort of somewhat dangerous, I guess, to them, so to speak.
Mm. Mm.
So I was able to go. And it's not to say I haven't been harassed since I left, but I changed my name. I moved away. I dove into my life. And, now that I've been speaking out and I get energetic attacks and things, but, I've already survived the impossible. Like, you know, nothing's going to shut me up now. I always say, I've said on other interviews, if they want to kill me, my mouth will be talking until my last breath.
Yeah. Well, literally, you've survived the unthinkable, and now what? But also very like, wow. Yeah, but, there you are. There, not everybody's like you, so that's the thing. And I've had Rachel Vaughan and Alandra on the show already, and they've spoken about their process, but again, it's vastly different. And yeah, yeah, that's all. As I said, I'm still speechless because these are things that don't usually get talked about, that I mean, in your circles, and obviously I've been on some of your Zoom meetings and stuff. It's kind of what we speak about, but people in the world aren't really talking about it. And, you know, I think they should because it's real. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people don't know, and that's part of it. And I dearly love Rachel. She's probably my best friend, and I adore Alondra. And this is what's so heartening, Val, is that not only did they not silence us or render us so incapacitated that we can't recover and heal, but we're speaking out. So the programming didn't really work. We broke it, and here we are. It's their worst nightmare. And there's so many survivors speaking out. It's really amazing. I never thought I would see anything like this.
Mm.
And if you understand SRA, you're going to understand how the world works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm starting to, and it's like it's wild, but it's real. Again, I keep on saying it's real because at some point it was like not real and then it became real for me as a person who wasn't, aware of any of this a couple years ago. Um, and well, and you're also doing it through a bunch of offerings. Like you're speaking, you're obviously invited to all these things that you just told me about, these conferences, which is amazing. You've been a part of a bunch of interviews, but then you also offer educational courses and seminars on this so people can educate themselves. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, well, you're like, where do I go from here? So where do people go from here if they want to learn and be aware?
Yeah, well, I have a website, unbroken.global. I have, I don't know, over 100 interviews with all, like I said, amazing people who have whistleblown this, that, and the other. A lot of survivor interviews. There's a lot of interviews of me, and I have begun to teach seminars. And so right now there's three: mind control seminar, a satanic ritual abuse, like what is it seminar, and a seminar exposing the Vatican. I'm going to continue to do seminars so people, when I offer them, they can join live, which is really fun because then we have a great discussion and Q&A afterwards. But if you miss it, you can also watch the recording later. So if people go to my website under classes, they can find those. They're very low priced. And, you know, I think one of the main things to really learn and understand is mind control, because we are all mind controlled through the educational system, through the media, through every system. We're poisoned, with they poison the air, the water, the food, the pharmas, everything in this reality, the frequencies, the EMFs, it's all like this assault on the human being. They want to keep us devolved, low consciousness in a frequency bandwidth that we call survival. And if you think about it, you look out there, they have engineered scarcity, they have engineered poverty. None of that's natural on this planet. And that is because these creatures, as Rachel calls them, and I love that, they can only succeed with secrecy and deception and with keeping us in a frequency bandwidth that they can control us in. Once we do our work and we learn the truth is a frequency, it's light, we rise to a frequency, to a consciousness where we're out of their reach. They're of the dark. They can only operate in this. If you look at Hawkins' scale of consciousness, at the higher frequencies, love, peace, whatever, that's out of their control. And so that's the goal. We could get to a point where this shit doesn't even exist at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that's
And
the
so,
intent.
yeah. So anyway, if you understand mind control, then you begin to, our minds, they don't need to use any kind of force because they have the prison around our minds. But when we take that off and see clearly, that's there now. Each person that frees their mind is no longer under these people's control. So yeah, so there's a lot of resources on my website. And then, satanic ritual abuse is really a very, deep and profound trauma, and something, difficult to recover from, but definitely you can recover from it. So if people need help with trauma, then they can also on my website look under services, and I work with people one-on-one. And as you know, because you're part of the group, I created this community. It's you can become an unbroken warrior, we call it, and we meet every month on Zoom. We have some great laughs. We curse, we talk about, it's like a group of people that are awake. It's so refreshing, isn't it? To be around other people and you can talk about all the real stuff without having people look at you like you have, three heads or something.
Mm.
So yeah, so basically unbroken.globe.
So good. So good. And yeah, I love being part of that group and the conversations that we get to have. Really, really, yeah, just empowering and fun and revealing and yeah, no bullshit. No
Yeah, no
bullshit.
bullshit. You
Yeah.
bring a lot of humor to them, by the way. You really crack us all up.
Thank you. Thank you. It is, hey, that's how I roll. Um, I just lost my train of thought. I was gonna say, right? The survival mode that we're in, because as a neuroscientist, yeah, I've learned a bunch of things about the brain, but particularly my PhD was on the way that the brain processes fear and anxiety related
Mhm.
behavior. And it was all on the
Yeah.
limbic system, the different parts of the limbic system.
Yes.
And now that I'm going through my awakening process, it's kind of an ongoing thing. I'm realizing like, oh wow, these structures, the limbic system that's primordial, it's been evolutionarily conserved across species, across time, has completely been programmed to be in survival. Like that's what we get taught. Oh, the limbic system for survival. But I'm like, yeah, but the limbic system is also for love. Like that's how you
Yeah.
experience love. The maternal bond comes from the amygdala, the maternal bonding also comes from the limbic system. So why is it that we're educated that the limbic system is all about survival and it's bad?
It's
Anyway.
more the brainstem. It's that's wired for survival. To me, the limbic system, like you said, it's about attachment and love also. But and because you're a neuroscientist, our brain doesn't finish growing till we're like 25. So that's why children have parents, because they don't have a cortex yet. Their highest brain functioning at some point is the limbic system, which is also emotional reactivity, impulsivity, it's not a great type of brain structure to operate in reality from. But what you're saying, I love that. And I want to hear kind of what you think about this. But from my understanding, I did my master's in neuropsych, so similar. Um, these people know how our psychology and our neurology work. So what they've done, if you look out into the world, everything is fear. The boogeyman, it's a virus, it's a terrorist, it's something. It's always something. It's a climate thing. And so they keep us in fear because when you're in fear, your brain is in survival. It shuts down the cortex and the prefrontal cortex because thinking takes too many seconds. So in a real danger situation, you have to react, fight or flight. So but the brain doesn't distinguish between a real danger and these pumping of fear-based words or screen what's on a screen. So they keep our cortex constantly shut down. So we are reacting all the time.
Mm.
And that's one of their main aspects of mind control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I back that 100% neuroscientifically. We are all in survival mode until we're not, but primarily throughout the majority of our lives, we are. Real threat or perceived threat is the same to the
Right.
brain. Absolutely the same thing, whether it's a real lion or whatever person's coming to stab you, or it's, you think something's going to happen because it's been shown to you 50,000 times as part of the programming. Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's almost like they've rewired our brains and captured them to live in constant fear and survival. And that's why we are in a world that is a lot of survival. They've set it up that way. But here's the good news. It's the only way they can control us. So once you rise out of that and realize, hell no, I'm not going to live in fear and survival, you're not under their control anymore.
Totally. And that's, I think, where I was leading to as well is despite all this fuckery, God, that word keeps
Yeah.
on coming back, but despite all
It's a
this
good word. Good
fuckery,
word.
we are like, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very neuroscientific word. Fuckery. Like we're not only surviving, but we're now like what I can feel and understand is we're starting to thrive. Like, we're actually starting to thrive. Yeah, we're not like really fucking thriving yet, but we're starting to thrive
Yeah.
because we do get to experience amazing things. And like just when we're not in survival mode, we can feel the love and the peace. Yeah, it's scarce, it's here and there, but I can definitely distinguish one from the other, which is great already. Because hey, if you can't distinguish it, you're fucked, you know?
Yeah, they don't like, when you're a psychopath, you're severed from your heart, which is, I think, where the soul kind of connects through in this reality. And so they don't understand love. And that's what we have over them. And if you think of all the abuse, like the literal abuse they have heaped on us in the form of wars and child abuse and scarcity and poverty and the weather warfare where they flood here and they burn there and then they blame it on climate change. The assault is, I mean, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. Why? Because we're actually inherently more powerful than them. And also because we have love and we have that heart connection and that connection to the creator, which is within, and they don't understand that and they're scared of that. And so even with all the abuse that humans have suffered, like there's an unnatural disaster, and then what does everybody do? They run out and help the other people.
Mm.
That's the human soul. That's the human being. They cannot understand that and they have not been able, yeah, okay, in some people, but in most people, they haven't beaten that out of us.
Mm.
And that's what we're going to rise on is that aspect of us. And, goodbye, because they don't even belong on this planet. They need to leave.
Yeah. True that. True that. Wow. I think that's a perfect place to end the conversation. But like I could keep talking to you for the next 50 hours, but I might just go and watch the seminars instead so you can get on with your life. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for your courage, your inspiration, for having this conversation with me and all the listeners that are going to listen to it. And just being, yeah, just such a force and light. Wow.
Well, Thank you, Val. You know, we're all a force and a light, and I would just encourage everyone to, you know, heal your trauma and remember who you are, because we all came here to be a part of this awakening. And instead of a great reset, it's a great awakening. And so step into that, because we need as many people as we can. And the faster, the more people that do this, the faster this shifts. So, you know, I have faith in humanity.
Me too. Me too. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to the listeners. If you've loved this conversation, share it with someone and contribute to their own awakening. Until next time.